In at 5, brick from Borley Rectory. Labelled as the most haunted house in Britain, Borley Rectory was built in 1862. It housed the rector of the parish of Borley before being damaged by a fire and later demolished in 1944. However, between those periods, paranormal events began to occur at the old rectory. Beginning in 1863, only a year after the house was built, locals of the town had reported hearing unexplained footsteps coming from the house, and then in 1990, 4 daughters reported seeing the ghost of a nun 40 yards from the house. Other locals had also reported strange occurrences such as phantom carriages being driven by headless horsemen. By the 1930s, a new set of residents were occupying the house and were driven to hire paranormal investigators to perform exorcisms, during which time one of the men was struck by a fist-sized stone. Ouch. In 1939, the fire was deliberately set ablaze, and locals had reported that they saw the figure of a ghostly nun not long before it happened. With the history of the house, it's no surprise the Warrens are holding onto one of the surviving bricks in order to conceal the spirits trapped within. In at 4, human skulls. This is the first of a few on our list to be collected from a satanic practice, and the picture is eerie and very unnerving. The human skull has a star on the forehead and is situated on a shelf on top of a miniature throne-esque stand. I say this because the Warrens haven't gone into too much detail about the history of the skull or the satanic practice it was used in. Likely it was a host to draw in a demonic entity or the devil itself. Many satanic rituals regarding devil worshipping made use of murder in their rituals. However, at the end of the 20th century, hysteria surrounding satanic rituals died down and summed up as a myth. Even FBI investigator Ken Lanning stated that he had investigated 300 allegations of satanic ritual abuse and found no evidence for Satanism or ritualistic activity in any of them. I don't know though, we live in a world devoted to the macabre, and I'm sure there are folks out there partaking in rituals like these. What do you guys think? In at 3, Ouija board. As we know, Ouija boards, also known as spirit boards or talking boards, were introduced by Hasbro as a child's game, each player taking turns to ask questions and waiting to see what the planchette spells out. Innocent enough, right? Well, we all know that's not the case. The Catholic Church were the first to point out the game can lead to occurrences such as demonic possession, you know, the usual, and advised inexperienced users to not mess with it. In 2001, Ouija boards were even burned in New Mexico by fundamentalist groups because they believed them to be symbols of witchcraft. But don't fret, they also burned Harry Potter books, so I'm not sure the heads were screwed on quite right. Regardless of everything, it's arguably pop culture that heightened the fear around the game, with films such as The Uninvited, The Exorcist, and Paranormal Activity all including the game, and violent entities communicating with it. Now, the Warrens of course have their own Ouija board in their occult museum. There isn't much information about its history or where they took it from, but I'm sure it's pretty damn creepy. In at number 2, African fertility dolls. Akuaba are wooden fertility dolls from Ghana and surrounding areas. They are primarily used in ritualistic ceremonies and carried on the backs of women hoping to conceive a child. In present day, they are more of a souvenir than a ritual device, but traditional users will still wash and care for the wooden doll in hopes of one day bearing a child. Like our previous number, there is not much information about the dolls in the museum, but I imagine they are storing some hefty secrets. I mean, take a look at this picture. And finally, in at number 1, masks used to project evil entities. As we now know, many of the items at the Occult Museum were collected from witchcraft rituals and voodoo ceremonies, and this one is no different. It's a handmade Sri Lankan mask comprised of evil spirits, and primarily used in ritualistic ceremonies to invoke the supernatural. This is usually presented through practices such as mime, facial, and body painting, and are connected to the worship of their ancestors. There are a handful of demon dance ceremonies, some with the belief in monsters of gigantic proportions known as the demons of the graveyard, and others that are just associated with a group of demons. Either way, these ritualistic masks are used to summon demonic entities, and the history this mask holds is dark and unnatural.
Number 5, the Anguished Man painting. Yeah, at first I thought this whole thing was a hoax, but checks off all the right boxes, doesn't it? Artist is an unknown painter, there's real blood mixed in with the paint. The artist then took their own life after they finished the painting. Sounds a bit made up. Well, the original owner, Sean Robinson, claims that his grandmother was the one who actually inherited this painting and gave it to him, saying that there was real blood mixed into this. Okay. His grandmother had claimed that the picture had always seemed to be attached to evil, and even saw a dark figure resembling a man always standing around the painting. After having strange things happen around Sean's house, he too said that he started seeing a shadowy figure, almost like a man now, standing at the bottom of his bed night after night. Sean decided to reach out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, paranormal investigators from Connecticut. He tried keeping the painting around at one point, even tried to sell it online, but for some reason it never sold. Sean said the painting became too dangerous and things were getting worse around the house and decided to give the Warrens the painting for safekeepings. Good idea, Sean. They have the painting locked away in their basement at their home, aka the occult museum for everything haunted. The painting is kept out of sight and no one is allowed to even look at it in person, for it draws evil energy, right? What do you think? I mean, the more I look at this thing, the more it scares the hell out of me. It is jarring. Number 4, Devil's Rocking Chair. I love a good rocking chair. Something soothing about it, you know? All the motion. Very relaxing. Rocking chairs. Rocking on their own, however. No, I don't do that at all. And this one is supposed to be you-know-whose personal chair. The Devil's Rocking Chair, which was bought for $67,000 from Ed and Lorraine Warren's site, is in the care of one Zach Baggins. This guy runs a haunted museum in Vegas and purchased the chair understanding fully what it does and is. The chair, originally used in the exorcism of David Glatzel in the 80s by the Warrens themselves, a true case involving murder and demonic possession. A true case. Some have seen a beast sitting in the chair, some have seen a dark, shadowy man. And the horrifying part? Baggins had to shut down his exhibit in 2019 because the chair was causing guests to have emotional breakdowns and episodes. One guest even passed out walking directly above the chair on the staircase. Slowly started to become a safety hazard, and Zach decided to remove the newest haunted item from his exhibit completely. Before Zach put the rocking chair in his exhibit, he said the only day it was in his home, him and a friend both had a very strange breakdown. Both of them crying uncontrollably and even speaking religious sayings obsessively. Number 3, Thomas Busby Chair. I thought it would definitely be more like skulls and dolls and stuff, but it seems so far that it's pretty much only furniture holds evil spirits. How about that? Another chair. Haunted, of course, and this tale is a chilling one. Not like the others aren't. The Thomas Busby Stoop Chair, or also famously known as Dead Man's Chair, is said to be a cursed object from the owner himself, Mr. Busby. This hardwood, allegedly haunted oak chair was cursed by the murderer Thomas Busby before his execution hanging in 1702 in North Yorkshire, England. Thomas Busby was arrested, tried, and condemned to death after he murdered his father-in-law, Daniel Audie, in 1702. Audie and Busby were running a coin counterfeiting business. After an argument about the business, Busby killed Audie. One variation of this story has Busby cursing the chair while on his way to the execution, whereas another says he was drunk in the chair that he was arrested in and cursed it, right then and there. Due to the many deaths later attributed to people sitting in the chair, the landlord donated it to the Thirsk Museum in the same town where it is having difficulty with guests sitting on top of it. It now stays hung above the floor near the ceiling where no one can even sit on it. That's good. Numerous deaths have been linked to this chair, from soldiers not returning home from war, to delivery drivers crashing their trucks hours later, to people even having strokes and heart attacks sitting in it. Death seems to be imminent anywhere this thing goes. It's been hung up since 2014 and remains there today. Number 2. The Cursed Mirror. Originally sitting in the main foyer in its 17th century antebellum home in Louisiana, this haunted object has been witness to some nasty history. The Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana is the home to deep-rooted slavery. The American South is known for its disgusting use of slave labor and would be the home in which this haunted piece sits. The house owned first by Mr. and Mrs. Clark Woodruff. These were racist plantation owners, and violent ones at that. It is said that the couple were very sadistic towards abuse of the slaves. A young woman by the name of Chloe was particularly abused when eavesdropping on a conversation Woodruff was having one night, resulting in him cutting both of her ears off. That's so unnecessary. Her mutilation was hidden, but Chloe planned her revenge quickly and decided to poison a cake which Mrs. Woodruff and her 2 children would be eating. She killed all 3 of them and was caught, tried, and hanged for her crime. It is Chloe's ghost in which experts say haunts the cursed mirror from the plantation. Ghostly women are seen in the mirror walking by, and smudged handprints are always seen, even with new trimmings and polished glass. The cursed mirror is believed to have Chloe's spirit trapped inside of it. By gazing into the mirror, evil things apparently would happen, resulting in health problems. Weird things happen around this mirror, and where it lays now, that's Ed and Lorraine's business. Ed and Lorraine are taking care of it, of course, thank God, and it sits in the couple's occult museum in Connecticut. Ungazable. Today, the Myrtles Plantation has been changed into a bed and breakfast, but still remains one of America's most haunted houses. What do you think? And coming in at number 1, Annabelle. Possibly the most infamous and dangerous possessed artifact found at the home of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Their occult museum is the home of the Annabelle doll. We know a little bit about this doll, of course, with all the films about her in the last couple years. Tons of people have flocked to the museum to take pics in front of her vase. She rests inside a glass case ominously marked "Warning, Positively do not touch. Warned. She was previously owned by a nursing student, Donna, in 1970. Gifted from her mother from a thrift store. After some creepy incidents involving the doll like levitating onto the table and moving around by itself, she took the doll to a medium who revealed it is possessed by the spirit of a little girl who died young. Ed and Lorraine were eventually called after the incidents would not stop, and they offered to take it to their home. However, this is the scary part on the drive home. Ed himself said that the doll was making the car do things out of his control. Stuffed in a bag, doused in holy water, he still felt the presence. The engine kept turning off, power steering would all of a sudden lock up. The hardest part was getting it into a safe locked case in their museum, where it's been ever since. Thank goodness. The doll holds evil power and demonic possession, Lorraine says, and she refuses to even make eye contact with it. Yeah, you know it's bad when they won't even look it in the eye, huh? The museum unfortunately has been shut down since 2019, but the cursed objects still seem to be staying put. Thank goodness.
Coming at number 5, we've got the Satanic Idol. Now, Satan is usually quite a controversial figure. In the past, any mention of the name would have been associated with something terrible, especially as satanic panic swept the nation. Why won't anyone think of the children, right? We love to assign weird moral values to stuff to ensure our political weight can be thrown around, but I'm getting off topic. These days, the jury is out on Satan. Many folks love the guy and worship him as ardently as anyone else would worship their deities. Some say he's a more forgiving figure than plenty of other gods and demigods. However, this idol doesn't seem to be associated with that end of the satanic spectrum. This one comes from the bowels of hell and brings with it misfortune and terror, or so they say. Let's take a look at this interesting oddity. With a misshapen, horned head, piercing blue eyes, and a strange, unnaturally slim body, this doesn't necessarily look like the powerful demon most folks would assume is Satan. Artists can take liberties with the things they create, so don't write it off simply based on its looks. Apparently, a young hunter had been scavenging through the woods in Connecticut when he stumbled upon this cursed idol. He didn't really know what to do with it, but he took it along just as well. Soon after coming into possession of this horned artifact, he ran into an old man in dark robes, one telling tales of doom and horror. This, of course, spooked the hunter, who discussed this interaction with his friends. Eventually, after some sleepless nights and anxiety, he was put in contact with the Warrens, who came by to evaluate the idol. They deemed it haunted indeed and took it off the poor guy's hands. I'm sure he was very glad to be free of it. Ed and Lorraine strapped the devil thing in and brought it back to their museum, where it still remains. So if you ever get a hankering for some devil worship or really want to look into some Gollum-esque blue eyes, you know where to go. Just be careful. That cloaked man in the woods is said to have been a worshipper of Satan, using the idol in dark and terrible rituals. I'm sure it's safe in the museum, but who knows. Coming in number 4, we've got the toy monkey. What is it about old school toys that makes them so creepy? Like, at some point in history, every single toy maker decided it was time to stop making them look that way and move on to much cuter, cuddlier, cooler, and overall less frightening things. Maybe tastes changed, or folks just collectively woke up to the fact that they were letting their kids play with nightmare objects, but regardless of the reason, I'm glad we've left these designs in the past. Dredging up these figures makes for some good spooky times though, right? Take this toy monkey for example. Would you buy your kids something like this these days? I'd wager no, and for good reason. Not only is it unsettling to look at, plenty of similar monkeys have been featured in the spookiest of scenes across Hollywood, but there's a lot of dark energy imbued in this particular monkey. The one at the Warrens Museum is said to carry a terrible curse. Hell, it was even featured in Annabelle Comes Home. So what does a little monkey have to do to earn such a reputation? Well, this one seems to stalk people, torment them, and then kill them. Oh no. Imagine this thing suddenly appearing in your life one day, then as time went on it started popping up in places you know you didn't leave it. Little monkey cymbals might be heard crashing in the middle of the night, and disembodied shuffling can keep you from sleeping. All that's creepy, but it's still just a toy, right? Hold up. Did its eyes just glow? That is some monkey business I want no part of. But hey, at least this one in particular is locked away and not to be recirculated into the general population of antique monkey toys. Well, for now anyway. Coming in number 3, we've got the Shadow Doll. Now, we've all got a particular cursed doll in mind when it comes to the Warrens, and now she's the star of a major motion picture franchise, so it seems that she's always gonna come in first. But there is another doll at the museum that should elicit at least the same amount of fear. That's right, I'm talking about the Shadow Doll. This thing is downright but ugly. Like, Annabelle as an OG Raggedy Annie is kinda creepy, and they had to make sure they punched up the creepiness with some porcelain features and unnerving eyes for for the movie. But if they made a movie featuring the shadow doll as is, I think they might actually have to make it less creepy. For real. I don't know if big movie theater chains would allow something like this on their screens. Feels like something out of a snuff film, maybe a low-budget exploitation flick. Nobody's looking at this and saying, oh yeah, I want to watch a whole movie based on this thing. Worse yet, the shadow doll seems to carry a much more terrible curse than most. Plenty of cursed dolls require you to be in the same room as them in order for the worst of the effects to hit you, but the shadow doll just needs you to view a picture of it to generate risk. Just looking at it means there's a chance it'll visit you in your dreams and kill you there, Freddy Krueger style. And based on looks, I don't think it would make it fun like Freddy does. It would just be brutal and upsetting. Goodness gracious. Coming in number 2, we've got the Pearls of Death. These are known for their outrageously dangerous powers. They might just look like a nice set of pearls waiting to be adorned by the fanciest of folk, but be warned, the glamour is not worth the price. And I'm not talking about how much you pay for them. No, it is not money that these pearls want, it is your life. Owners of this particular string of aquatic orbs have complained time and time again of the necklace constricting around their throat and choking them. According to the first woman to adorn herself with this luxurious item, she felt as if she was being strangled as soon as she put them on. She attempted to take them off, but was unsuccessful. Panicked, she rushed out to request help, and it took multiple people yanking on the string to finally set her free. Since then, people have been very reluctant to wear these pearls. Some believe that a Satanist or black magic worshipper cursed the necklace before it was given to the unfortunate woman, kinda like the opposite of a holy person blessing an object. How fun. I wonder if we got a priest in there, whether they could cancel out the curse. I suppose not too many people are willing to test whether or not the pearls are still strangling. And finally, at number 1, we've got Annabelle, the Warren Museum tenant who needs no introduction, the mistress of the glass case, the shadow clawer of college boyfriends, the mega million movie star herself, Annabelle. What a classic cursed doll. Honestly, I'm sure the museum could liquidate most of their other objects and still have a similar crowd come by if they just kept Annabelle. Legendary. She looks a little different in real life than in the movies, although I'm sure this is true of any movie star. We've already discussed her Raggedy Annie appearance, especially compared to the more porcelain figure in the flicks. However, this doll makes up for a lack of spooky looks with a plethora of terrifying tales. After being gifted to a nursing student, Annabelle started acting strange. She'd move around the house on her own and leave little notes to the girls living there. Eventually, she would attack and strangle the boyfriend of one of the students, leaving them desperate for help. The Warrens soon arrived and whisked the doll away. However, they seemed to know just how wretched and terrible she could be, and as such, they locked Annabelle away in a holy box. This seems to keep her at bay, but who knows? Someday she could break free once again. I'm sure there are plenty more extra cursed and haunted objects held at the Warrens Occult Museum, but today we've only got time for 5.
And at number 5, shrunken heads. One of the most disturbing and fascinating collections that the Warrens have at their museum are their shrunken heads. Often used for voodoo rituals, they claim that many of these heads have been defiled by evil. Shrunken heads, for those of you who don't know, are severed human heads that have been prepared in a particular way to be used for rituals, trophies, or for trade purposes, often associated with the act of headhunting in regions of the world like the Amazon rainforest with various indigenous tribes. They're also used as a means of scaring off enemies. Which, yeah, totally understand how that works. Would not go anywhere near that. And at number 4, a vampire coffin. While vampires are often portrayed as sex symbols in movies and books, vampires in real life, if they do exist, are allegedly much more dangerous. I can imagine why. Inside the museum, the Warrens have a coffin that is said to have been used by a real-life modern-day vampire. On its front, there's a gothic design, and a photograph of Ed taken upon retrieving the coffin. So, what do you guys think? Is there a chance that vampires really exist? Or are they just a fantasy? There have been cases throughout history of humans drinking blood, claiming that the act is life-sustaining, but whether or not their anatomy is that of what a vampire is supposed to be is actually yet to be scientifically proven. Who knows? Maybe the Warrens have stumbled upon something interesting. And at 3, masks. The Warrens have a variety of strange and obscure masks in their collection from all over the globe, including parts of Africa. They've researched over 3,500 cases, so naturally they've come into contact with many a mask with nefarious origins. One mask was used as a topa for diabolical protection. There are voodoo masks accompanied by ritualistic objects. Others have been possessed, and when someone puts on the mask, they risk becoming possessed themselves. Other masks have previously been possessed and no longer are, but are kept at the museum for safekeeping. Typically, the Warrens keep objects that are still possessed or have risk of harming humans locked within glass cases. So fear not, friends. Although, safety first. Maybe don't try to put on one of their masks. I also imagine it would not smell good. And at number 2, psychic photographs. Psychic photographs, according to Ed Warren, are a fascinating phenomenon in which a camera manages to capture the electromagnetic energy of a spirit, capturing either just the energy source or the apparition which depicts the ghost's spirit. In other words, they're photographs that have ghosts in them. According to Ed, I quote, "The camera is an impartial witness. It takes a picture of what it sees. It's not something that's made up. There are many ways that pictures of ghosts can be taken." He goes on to say that a ghost can actually project its image onto the camera's film by thinking of what it looks like by projecting it telepathically. They bypass your physical eye and go into your mind's eye, or your third eye. Now, some of these photographs are defiled by evil according to the Warrens. They also have other photographs featured at the museum too, depicting heinous acts of Satanism, and for the most part, it's the devil in an act of Satanism. Ugh, creepy stuff.
Coming in at number 5, we have Dr. Jack Kevorkian Death Van, also known as the Deathmobile. Dr. Jack Kevorkian's van was a place many people spent their last moments alive. The 1968 Volkswagen van was where Dr. Kevorkian carried out as many as 130 assisted suicides in the 90s, and has become a piece of history. However, at the time, the pathologist was met with controversy and public criticism for his taboo work on physician-assisted suicide with terminally ill patients. He spent 8 years in prison for second-degree murder because of this, but is often viewed as a pioneer in the medical field and as an activist. His impact was so great that HBO released a drama called You Don't Know Jack, in which Al Pacino won an Emmy and a Golden Globe for his portrayal of the controversial doctor. Over the year, the death van has seen many different owners. Zach purchased this van for $32,500 from American Jewelry and Loan. When the Detroit pawn shop first bought the vehicle, it was actually featured on an episode of a TV show. Apparently, Long Island medium Teresa Caputo also passed by the van in their warehouse and said she felt something there. Visitors of Zach's Haunted Museum can peek inside the Dr. Jack Kevorkian's death van and see the exact spot where many people died. Coming in at number 4, we have Ed Gein's cauldron. This is certainly one of the more gruesome relics on display at Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum, and it's believed to have belonged to the butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein. He's known for not only committing 2 murders, but mutilating corpses and fashioning items from human skin. Some of this morbid creation include masks made from real human faces, a human skin lampshade, and a female skin suit. Although his kill count doesn't technically classify him as a serial killer, he still served as inspiration for several fictional serial killers like Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. This cauldron is said to have been a place for Ed Gein to boil body parts in, but its authenticity is largely unknown. It was auctioned off in 2015 by a man named Dan McIntyre. He claimed to have inherited it from his grandmother, who bought it in 1958 at Gein's estate sale following his arrest. That's bleak as The highest bidder was Zach, purchasing the little pot for $2,800. At the time, Dan said he was happy to be rid of it, as it was the source of strange phenomena. I mean, I wouldn't want that in my home. Now, Ed Gein's cauldron calls Zach's Haunted Museum home, where it is said to radiate negative energy. Coming in at number 3, we have the Demon House Staircase. The original staircase from the Gary Demon House is said to be so haunted that construction crews walked off the job and refused to come back after its installation. Set back in a dimly lit corner, the wooden staircase rests on a layer of dirt extracted from the location famous for demonic activity. The Demon House was located in Gary, Indiana, and was unfortunately home to the Ammons family. It was said to be a portal to hell, and the demons seemed to emanate from beneath the stairs, the same stairs displayed at Zach's museum. There were reports of demonic possessions, a child levitating, and many other disturbing events. The family's matriarch, LaToya Ammons, had to undergo multiple exorcisms as a result. It was so bad that even the local police department and social services were convinced of its purported hauntedness. There are things in this world that we will never fully understand, like why Zach decided to buy the home plagued by demonic entities. He did shoot his documentary Demon House there, where he investigated the haunting. It must have left an impact on him because the house has since been demolished and the stairs continue to haunt Zach's museum. Coming in at number 2, we have the Devil's Rocking Chair. This sinister chair is linked to a very famous investigation done by Ed and Lorraine Warren, and its story serves as the plot for The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It. Zach actually purchased this chair for $67,000 just hours before the death of Lorraine Warren. Ooh, creepy. The Devil's Rocking Chair was the site of the infamous exorcism of David Glatzel, who was allegedly possessed by a demon. The 11-year-old at the time was being tormented by a man-like demon who resembled a beast with sharp, jagged teeth, horns, and hoofs. As the haunting progressed, the chair was said to be under the demon's power, and David would often see the beast sitting in it. Ed and Lorraine performed numerous exorcisms on David in that very chair. The final exorcism was a success, and the demon was expelled from David right into his sister's boyfriend, who killed his landlord shortly after. after. He pled not guilty due to demonic possession, a first in American history, citing that the devil made me do it. It didn't work, by the way. In 2019, the Devil's Rocking Chairs exhibit actually had to be shut down because it was doing its job a little too well. 6 different people shared the same disturbing experience with the chair. They all had bouts of uncontrollable crying, and one even collapsed above it. The museum having adverse effects on visitors isn't anything new, with ambulances having to be called in the past, but this was the first time in the museum's history that an exhibit had to be shut down. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Dybbuk Box. In the number 1 spot is known as the most haunted object in the world, the notorious Dybbuk Box. According to Jewish mythology, a Dybbuk is a malevolent spirit that's said to haunt and possess the living, and the Dybbuk Box is home to the evil entity. This wine cabinet is so haunted that it actually served as inspiration for the horror film The Possession. The Dybbuk Box first became a sensation when it was listed on eBay, along with an extensive ghost story attached to it. After some owner hopping, it came into Zach's possession. Shortly after the Dybbuk Box arrived in the museum, holes allegedly began to appear around the haunted cabinet. A downtown Las Vegas marketing executive also apparently witnessed a black cloaked apparition pass through the exhibit's door while doing a private tour with Zach. This haunted relic is no joke. Even Post Malone was apparently cursed by the Dybbuk when he visited the museum with Zach himself. After touching Zach's shoulder, who was resting his hand on the box, Post Malone had a streak of terrible luck. In less than a month, his private jet was forced to make an emergency landing when 2 tires blew out. His house was broken into by armed robbers, and then he got into a car crash.
Number 5. The Knife Blade Man. Discovered in 2018 in northern Italy, a group of archaeologists were digging up a massive gravesite of the Lombardo, an ancient Germanic people. Found in a necropolis, which is a very fancy word for a large, elaborate tomb, and maybe one of the best words in the English language, the team found hundreds of skeletons that were at the site, including horses and greyhounds, and for the most part, they're not particularly notable. You've seen one old bag of bones, you've seen them all, except for one skeleton that in the place of a forearm was an impressive blade. Now this raises countless fascinating questions. Who was this guy? Was this the first Assassin's Creed protagonist? Some legendary madman of a warrior who lost an arm and thought, I don't know, put a blade on there, I can still fight? Well, the Lombardo people placed a great emphasis on war and combat in their culture, so it is possible. The researchers noted that there was a clear dated buckle around his arm, and pressure on the bones of his arm showed that it was an intentional prosthetic, right down to the wear and tear on his teeth, suggesting he tightened the straps for his hidden blade with his teeth. Most of the other skeletons found in the necropolis all had blades buried with them at their sides, perhaps ritually out of honor, but this unique specimen had it grafted onto his arm like he's history's first cyborg or Baraka from Mortal Kombat. To be able to not only survive an amputation, pre-antibiotics and modern medicine is already impressive. And hey, if you're always looking to learn something from Knife Arm Skeletons, then toss a subscribe our way. Top 5 Scaries always got a couple scary videos for you every day. Let's creep on creeping on. Number 4. The Hanging Coffins. We're going up to China for our next one, specifically Hubei, China. There's a cave there that the locals call the Cave of the Fairies, and you've probably already realized that there's gonna be a dark secret involved with the Cave of Fairies. We never talk about anything nice here. It was said that the mythical creatures were supposed to live in the cave, but those who explored it inside found that there wasn't much of anything living at all, instead finding something deeply disturbing. Rows and rows of coffins, some hanging from ropes, some jammed, wedged between the rocks of the cave. The coffins themselves were massive, weighing around 200 pounds each, and some destroyed and ravaged. Dating the coffins puts them at around 1200 years old, and are thought to have been put up by the ancient Bo people, an extinct culture hailing from China, famous for this unique practice of hanging coffins from caves. It's thought that this served 2 purposes. 1, as a ritualistic offering meant to bless the dead, and 2, from a practical, pragmatic sense, it would prevent any would-be carrion eaters from picking through to get a meal. Fascinatingly, it can be seen that all of the coffins were carved from a single tree, one big log. One wonders if that was part of the ritual element of it. Now, the coffins being smashed is interesting, because the discoverers of the coffins theorized that the damage was actually pretty recent, dating it to the 1960s. And their prevailing theory was that someone wandered into this cave in a place of desperation and smashed the coffins to garner some firewood in the hopes that they could survive the night and not pass among the hanging dead. Let's just hope they didn't release any ancient curses at the same time. Number 3. the black sarcophagus. Now you might have heard of this one before. If you were on Twitter much a couple years ago, maybe you remember vaguely hearing about sarcophagus juice. Maybe those words are ringing a strange bell. There was a pretty good petition going around to let people drink the sarcophagus juice. But let's back up a bit. What is sarcophagus juice and where did it come from and why do we want to drink it? Well, I've got the answers. Somewhat. I've got some answers. In 2018, a team of archaeologists digging in Alexandria, Egypt, discovered a massive granite black sarcophagus, which immediately set off everybody's warning signs that you should not touch that. People wondered what the 30-ton stone slab could be containing, with some even suggesting it could have been the mighty body of Alexander the Great. People warned the archaeologists that there, could be some ancient evil, like when King Tut's tomb was raided and a very strange curse befell the explorers and excavators. Well, what they found wasn't a hidden curse, but honestly something stranger. 3 skeletons inside the coffin with a skull shattered by an arrow and a whole lot of mysterious black goop, or sarcophagus juice. So again, looping right back around it. What is the sarcophagus juice and does it taste good? Well, scientists analyzed the sludge and discovered that it was made from a combination of animal fats, tree resin, beeswax, and crude oil. The sludge has been recovered out of multiple coffins and sarcophagi, so it's not exclusive to this dreaded one. But that doesn't explain why this nasty stuff is there. Well, there's some theories about this, no concrete answers, but I'll do my best. It's said that when someone died, they become a form of the god Osiris, who is associated with death and rebirth. Osiris was called the Black One, and is depicted with very dark black skin in the guise of a mummified body. As well, black is also a color associated with the deposits on the bank of the River Nile after a flood season. Fresh and fertile soil was seen as inherently regenerative. So it's theorized that with the linking concepts of Osiris and the regeneration of the soil, soaking and filling the coffins with this black sludge was a very confusing part of the mummification process. Number 2. Headless Vikings. In 2008, a group of archaeologists were doing some fairly routine work in Dorset, a seaside town in England, in a rather dull job to improve local roads around the area. As could be expected, not too much of note was discovered, except for the mass grave of 54 headless Viking mercenaries. And not just were their skulls missing, but the rib cages, arms, and leg bones were all arranged neatly, surrounded by discarded teeth. No clothes or weaponry was discovered. So what happened? Because nothing my imagination is coming up with is conjuring anything good. Well, the bones revealed some fascinating finds, and I'll warn you now, by Odin's beard, they're all terrifying options. The teeth surrounding the grave were all filed down, but done neatly as if a craftsman had done it. Obviously, pre-Novocaine dental surgery wouldn't go down easy, so the process must have been excruciating, suggesting perhaps these men had it done to them out of some sort of punishment, or they did it to themselves to frighten their opponents and show them just how strong they were. Neither one of those options is particularly pleasant to consider. But now let's get spine chillin' with it. The archaeologists' prevailing theory about what happened to this big Nordic pile of bones is that looking at the wound patterns on the ribs and the torso bones were smart, surgical, precise blows, not matching with a rabid hack job you'd expect from a brawl. The archaeologists suggested that the Vikings weren't slain in battle, but rather offered up perhaps to some sort of strange, sadistic ritual, or perhaps a mass execution. It would explain why the men had no gear with them as well. The large number of bodies and intense cruelty of it suggests that there wasn't any trained executioners, leading to the prevailing theory that it's a dark, dark ritual. Number 1. Bog people. Name one good thing that's ever been found in a bog. Need some help? There's never been one. For peat farmers in northern Europe, it's a thankless life, working in wet, muddy bogs and occasionally finding leathery preserved bog mummies. Due to the low temperatures, lack of oxygen, and high acidity of bogs, bodies found there are preserved disturbingly well. Well, preserved is a bit of a misnomer. They're twisted and rived, but they're intact, sort of. It's hard to think of these as preserved well because they look like the scariest things you've ever seen, but the process is weirdly fascinating if you're interested in looking up something disgusting. This happens all over northwestern Europe, with no one specific case to point to. It happens all over Ireland, Germany, Great Britain, the Netherlands, and so on. The bodies range from anywhere as old as 8,000 years old, preserved, to the most recent appearing to have been from the early turn of our century. Now, no one really has any idea how many of these bog bodies could be out there, and no one really knows how the unfortunate bog victims ended up in their final muddy resting spot. Some of them could possibly have just been unlucky souls who found themselves lost and fell in. But another prevailing theory is that Roman Iron Age people in Northern Europe sacrificed people to the bogs, which sounds too dark to be real, but apparently is. They would also offer people as sacrifice or as punishment for their perceived social imperfections, which may I just say I am very glad this practice isn't commonplace, because I would be cast into the bogs faster than you could say peat deposit.
Number 5 on this list is a cannon. Hong Kong is pretty much surrounded by water. Their entire culture is very connected to the water with fishing and boats. That's why finding things in the water isn't totally shocking. However, when that thing is a super heavy, super old cannon, then it's a tad bit more interesting. History Things says experts believe that this discovery might lead them to uncover more hidden treasures beneath the harbor city. Bill Jeffrey, the archaeologist working with Hong Kong's Underwater Heritage Group, comments that we see this as the tip of the iceberg. The Hong Kong SAR is 60% water, and yet nearly no archaeology has been done underwater here. The granite stock, which is known as the cross piece that can be found on most anchors, was around 6 feet long. This piece lay 10 feet below water and was situated near Hong Kong's High Island. After investigating this ancient maritime artifact, experts have discovered that this granite stock dates back between 960 to 1278 AD. This anchor fits the exact style and material that would have been used during China's Song Dynasty. I think what makes this so mysterious is that comment about how hardly any of the water has been explored for archaeology. Finding something like this underwater as they did can only mean one thing. Either somebody partied a little too hard 1,000 years ago and decided that taking a cannon out in the middle of the ocean and throwing it overboard was a good idea, or, and much more realistically, there are more archaeological finds to be had underwater. Who knows how many things they could discover just lying at the bottom of the ocean. Number 4 on this list is a tiny bird. Okay, so I'll be honest folks, this one isn't super mysterious, but it did come from China and it is wicked cool. The artifact is a very small bird sculpture, literally so tiny that you could probably fit 20 of them in one hand. It's made from blackened bone and doesn't really look like much. Just a very basic bird potentially sitting atop of a perch. So what makes this thing so special and why has it made our list? Well, this little bird is pretty freaking old. This tiny sculpture of a bird discovered at Lingjing, China is 13,500 years old. We're talking about something that is hundreds to thousands of generations older than we are right now. This Paleolithic bird, being the ripe young age of 13,500 years, is the oldest discovered 3D piece of art in all of East Asia. The way that it's made also indicates that there are a lot more of these little guys to be found. How smooth the sculpture is shows that this wouldn't have been a one-off from the artist and they knew what they were doing. I guarantee that whoever made this that many years ago couldn't even begin to comprehend that their tiny sculpture would make for a talking point on a YouTube video this many years later, and honestly, that's pretty cool. Number 3 on this list is bronze vessels. Indiana University says that these bronze vessels were found in tombs and were made for use in rites performed on ancestral altar or cast specifically for burial with the dead. Only Chinese kings and high-ranking nobility could afford such expensive and labor-intensive artifacts which required a knowledge of mining, smelting, metallurgy, and casting to execute. From Shang Dynasty records comprised of some 200,000 inscriptions on bone and turtle shells, we know that Chinese ancestors were procreated with elaborate rites, feasts, and sacrifices. If ancestors were displeased with the activities of their descendants or the rituals offered to them, they might fail to act on their progeny's behalf or even cause their descendants harm. This could come in the form of poor harvests, droughts, or famine. The Chinese believed in a complex world of spirits which comprised a multitude of nature deities, royal ancestors, and others who controlled important earthly phenomena such as weather, harvests, births, deaths, and military campaigns. So it's pretty clear that these bronze vessels played a role in the rituals the Chinese performed with their dead, but the passage also leads me to believe that they may have been involved in causing people to die in the first place. These are ritualistic artifacts, and considering the Chinese believed in a complex world of spirits, I don't think it's unrealistic to think that they may have used these in rituals to curse someone with a poor harvest or even death. To use these bronze vessels in appealing to a deity and have that deity help them with their current issue. Of course, I'm only speculating here, and the exact use of these things in rituals will probably remain a mystery. Number 2 on this list is the Sangsuidu masks. The Sangsuidu masks are some of the most recent and most mysterious discoveries that archaeologists have made in China in quite some time. Aaron Reich says, remains of a gold mask dating back 3,000 years were found in a huge treasure trove of artifacts discovered at an archaeological site in China's Sichuan province, which sheds more light on an ancient civilization that remains mysterious to historians. The mask consists of around 84% gold, measures 28 centimeters high and 23 centimeters wide, and weighs about 280 grams, according to the English Language Daily reported. But according to Lei Yu, head of the Sangsuidu site excavation team, the whole mask would weigh over half a kilogram. If a whole mask like this was found, it wouldn't just be the largest and heaviest gold object from that period found in China, but the heaviest gold object found from that time period anywhere. The mask remains one of over 500 artifacts found in the cache at the site. The Sichuan province is one of the most mysterious provinces in China. These masks are gorgeous too and look to be extremely valuable. No one currently knows what they were used for. Something this beautiful has to be connected to royalty or to some sort of ancient and important ritual. Potentially something that someone might wear when performing a ritual that would connect them to a god or some other deity. Very little is known about this dynasty and their practices, so sadly these masks and what they were used for will also remain a mystery. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army has got to be the most famous Chinese artifacts to have ever been discovered. There's just simply nothing in the world that comes close to rivaling their uniqueness. Chinese workers digging a well in 1974 made a startling discovery: thousands of life-size terracotta figures of an army prepared for battle. Now called the Terracotta Army or Terracotta Warriors, the figures are located in 3 pits near the city of Xi'an in China's Shaanxi province. After the warriors were discovered, the site became a museum and a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. The pits are situated less than 1 mile to the northeast of a pyramid-shaped mausoleum constructed for the first emperor of China, Xi Zhangquang. According to UNESCO World Heritage Center, archaeologists suspect that the unexcavated tomb could contain an entire replica of the city of Xi'an, which the warriors guard. The 3 pits contain an estimated 8,000 life-size terracotta figures, of which about 2,000 have been excavated. The figures were created to serve the emperor in the afterlife and include a mix of chariots, cavalry, armored soldiers, and archers. There are high-ranking officers, and one of the pits, number 3 actually, served as a command post for the army and contains an honor guard and ornate chariot for the force's chief commander. All 3 pits are active archaeological sites, and visitors can see excavations taking place. Maybe the most mysterious thing about all of this is what is in the unexcavated tomb that they're guarding. Based on how the tomb is situated, it's currently impossible to go inside without destroying some of the history, and this is why it remains unsearched. But one has to imagine that whatever is inside of it could be extremely valuable. Whatever is in that unopened tomb warranted the building of over 8,000 statues to guard it. I don't know if I've ever done anything 8,000 times, let alone build extremely intricate statues. Hit me with a comment down below on what you believe these ancient soldiers are actually guarding.
Number 5. The Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. The Book of Abramelin, or more formally, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, is an old Jewish magic text that is thought to date back at some point in the 14th or 15th century. Now, it wasn't the initial publication of this book that gave it its notoriety. Instead, it was when it was 19th and 20th century magicians magicians who were in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is a British secret society dedicated to the practice, research, and upholding of old occult magic ways. But hush hush, you didn't hear that from me. One of the founders of the Golden Dawn, S.L.M. Mathers, created the first ever English translation of the book in the 1890s, drawing from a previously established 17th century French translation. Now, Mathers' translation quickly became the definite magic text of the 19th century, eventually helping inspire Aleister Crowley to inspire his system of magic, the legendary occultist and fixture of one of the best Ozzy Osbourne songs ever. That solo still goes, man. Now, there's all kinds of spells and magic inside this text. Some real highlights include spells on how to conjure somebody and turn them into a donkey, how to summon a monkey to do your bidding, that sounds great, and how to bring forth spirits to fetch you goods. The big key point in this text, however, is an epic, multi-month spanning ritual that, if performed correctly, will allow the sorcerer to commune with their own guardian angel. The book theorizes that everyone has a guardian angel and that they are another part of their essence, a spiritual other half of yourself. The ritual involves, I don't know how to say this politely. You have to, they say you have to get blissfully intimate with your other half. Once the honeymoon period is over, the caster then has to summon up and conquer unredeemed spirits of the infernal regions of hell to conquer them. And then they'll be able to master the spirit domain. That sounds like a lot of irredeemed spirits. I hope my angel might help out a little bit with that. This all sounds very complicated, so all things considered, maybe it's for the best that this one's locked away. Seems like heavy reading, not before bedtime. And if you're looking for more true tales of terror, fake frightening fribs, cursed relics, ancient evils, aliens, cryptids, conspiracies, ghouls, goblins, and pretty much everything spooky you can think of, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. Stay subscribed, but way more importantly, stay scared. Okay, let's keep going. Whole lot more video to get through. Number 4. Book of Soiga. The Book of Soiga, also known by a more complicated name, the Alderia Siva Soiga Vocor, is an occult text that hails back from the 15th century. I'm pretty sure just saying that name out loud in front of the camera, I probably caused a curse on the office, so I'm sorry about that. This text would have been lost to time, just another forgotten cursed manuscript, if it weren't for the obsessive efforts of John Dee, a 16th century polymath who had his hands in just about every field of study. Polymath is a fancy word for a guy who studies just about everything, and Dee practiced chemistry, physics, astronomy, and also the occult. You know, there's always more to learn, right? Mr. Dee was particularly interested in contacting angels to learn the secrets of the universe. And this book contains a litany of recipes for magic spells and all sorts of writings on demonology and astrology, but most importantly, and what caught Mr. Dee's attention, is that the book is said to include the names and genealogies of all of heaven's angels. Dee believed that the book contained an ancient divine message written in a language spoken to by Adam, the true unspoiled word of God. That's a pretty big statement. Now, much like the Voynich manuscript, which I'll mention a little later in the video, so put a pin in that for now, it had 36 cryptic tables that remained undeciphered for centuries. Dee attempted at one point to crack the code with the help of a mystic who convinced Dee that he could channel the angels for him. Dee allegedly was so desperate to unlock the contents of this book that when his mystic told him it was part of the ritual that he be allowed a night with John Dee's wife, he agreed. That's the oldest trick in the book, man. The old "I'll let you talk to angels if I can go out with your wife" gamble. Ugh, can't believe you fell for it. Dee's wife would end up birthing a son, Theodore Dee, the fatherhood of which was disputed, to say the least. John Dee was never able to crack the code in his lifetime and decipher the Book of Soiga, and perhaps for the best, as it was said he was warned that man was never meant to uncover those secrets, and that knowledge would end his life. The book is now said to reside in the British Library, although digital copies are available. Read it at your own risk, and if somebody says they can translate it for you, just make sure you really read everything on the fine print in the contract before you sign that, okay? Just looking out for you. Number 3, the Grand Grimoire. That is so fun to say. This next entry has been nicknamed the Gospel of Satan. So if you're looking for an indication as to whether or not this book is, evil, there you go. They had to put that on a sticker, put it on the cover right next to the Oprah's Book Club recommendation. This book is said to have originally been written by a man possessed by the devil sometime in the 16th century. It's an infamous occult text and is said to contain dark incantations, spells and rituals, tools on how to force demons to do one's bidding, and even some instructions for a little necromancy 101 for fledgling dead raisers. It's not all brimstone and hellfire though. There are also reports on how to make pacts with spirits for personal gain, rituals to win the lottery, talk talk to ghosts, make yourself invisible, and even adorably, how to win love. Never heard of a demon working to help someone fall in love. Now all that sounds cool, definitely. I know I would love to have like a little skeleton minion who could help me with chores, maybe be like my little buddy. I love playing a necromancer in Skyrim, but these things don't really work out if you don't know what you're doing. Take a look at Full Metal Alchemist, that didn't work, they didn't know what they were doing. Even opening this book is considered equivalent to selling your soul to the devil. Soon as you crack the spine, it's like signing the contract. Because of the book's nefarious reputation, the original copy of the manuscript has been sealed away inside the Vatican's secret archives, and not currently available to the public. So I don't think whatever they're listing on Amazon as the Grand Grimoire for $10 is the real Grand Grimoire. Number 2, the Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript has got to be one of my favorite stories of a mysterious manuscript like ever. I guess that's why I put it at number 2. Unlike a lot of entries on this list, it's actually very easy to come across a digital copy of the Voynich Manuscript. It's available to read online. The only trouble is reading it honestly probably won't do you a lick of good, since it's written in a language no one has ever heard of and there's no record of it ever having existed. Yale University has the entire thing up and available online if you're feeling confident enough that you can take a crack at it and feel like banging your head against a brick wall for a few hours. The book is a handwritten, hand-illustrated codex of 240 pages of pure mystery, featuring gorgeous illustrations and typography, and what the book is about is your guess is as good as mine, honestly. Carbon dating suggests that it stems from the 15th century, and analysis of the style of the text and illustrations within suggests that it could have been penned during the Italian Renaissance. But just about every single aspect of this thing is shrouded in mystery. We don't even know what it's truthfully called. The Voynich manuscript is the name it was given after the initial owner, Wilfrid Voynich, purchased it in 1912 and brought it to public attention for the first time. Sorry, not the first owner, I'm sure several other people owned it before him. As such, the language inside the book is occasionally referred to as Voynichese. Now some pages are missing, lost to time completely, and the pages we do have are just a puzzle. Some are foldable sheets of various sizes, some pages have wondrously drawn diagrams or illustrations showing things like plants, some fictional, some real, and astrological symbols, drawings of people. Over the years, there have been several efforts to try and decode and document the book and figure out just what it is. A prevailing theory, admittedly a boring one, is that it's a guide to botany written in a mysterious script, a forgotten language, an uncrackable code, an incredibly convoluted hoax. Of course, with any good mystery, there are some wild theories. Some say the Voynich manuscript could be written from an extraterrestrial gifted to humanity, or written in demonic script perhaps, or that biblical language that we were mentioning in the book Soygas a few points ago. Like I said, it's available online, so I leave this up to you. If you manage to crack it, let us know down below in the comments. We're all clamoring for it. And number 1, the Codex Gigas. When it comes to cursed and demonic books, the Codex Gigas is one of the biggest ones around. Like, literally. Codex Gigas translates to giant book, which isn't exactly a scary name. When you see the size of this behemoth, it starts to make a little bit more sense. This thing is massive. 2 feet long. Now, giant, oversized, illuminated manuscripts were pretty common around the area the book was penned, but this one stood out for its immense size and the dark rumors surrounding the supposedly cursed text. Don't even try reading this thing, just lifting it will give you a hernia. That's the curse. It's occasionally been dubbed Satan's Bible due to the legends surrounding its origin. It's a good story, so get cozy. Supposedly, the legend goes that a monk by the name of Herman the Recluse, which is also what they used to call me, was condemned to death for heresy and was to be walled up alive and starved. In a desperate plea to save himself, Herman tried to convince the prior and the abbot as a whole that if he could pen a manuscript to honor God's glory, and that it would contain all of human knowledge and all of human history in one book, and if he could pen it in one night, he would be let free. The abbot agreed, thinking this was, of course, impossible. Herman wrote until midnight, wearing his fingertips down, and in a moment of desperation, made a prayer to Lucifer and asked for his eternal soul in exchange for the book's completion in order to repent for his sins. I totally get it. I gotta be honest, I have done some pretty nutso stuff trying to make sure my scripts get in time for deadline. Haven't quite sold my soul to the devil yet. I usually just rail Red Bulls, but I'd probably make a similar deal under a similar deadline. Now, I don't want to poke any holes in Herman's logic here, but I will say maybe selling your soul to the devil is part of the reason you got into this mess in the first place, because that does sound a little bit like heresy, but it's not my place to judge. I'm not an archdeacon. A variation of the legend states that Herman worked for years on the manuscript, day and night, but still was unable to complete it in his lifetime and asked for the devil's assistance. Anyway, no matter the story, the legend states that Satan signed the Bible with a particularly terrifying illustration of himself. I mean, take a look at it, it's horrifying looking. The book contains a birth of information. Like they said, it was supposed to be everything humanity had attained up to that point in one big book. These days, the Codex Gigas is preserved in the Natural Museum in Sweden, where you can admire the penmanship of Herman the Recluse and his ghost author Satan.
Number 5. The Necronomicon. To ease our way into this list, let's begin with a supposedly completely fictional book, created by the famous writer H.P. Lovecraft. Also referred to as the Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon appears in several of Lovecraft's stories where it was supposedly written in the early 1700s by an Arabic man named Abdul al-Hazrad, who was a devotee of the demonic deities Yog-Sothoth and Cthulhu, before he was apparently horribly devoured by an invisible demon in front of a presumably very confused and very terrified crowd. After this, the work was apparently translated and passed down over the years, having versions made in Greek, Latin, and English, while simultaneously being banned by various political and religious figures throughout history. Lovecraft was very sparing with the details about the contents and appearance of the book, believing that the mystery made it more frightening, though sections of it are quoted in his stories, such as the famous couplet appearing in The Nameless City, which goes, "That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange aeons even death may die." Over the years, Lovecraft was asked several times if the Necronomicon was in fact a real book, but he would always answer that it was not, and that the idea came to him in a dream. Of course, a number of paranormal enthusiasts believe that this dream was actually a vision given to Lovecraft by the demonic entities, and over the years, many famous libraries who people believe are hiding copies of the book, such as the Vatican Library, often receive requests from eager readers wanting to know the secrets of life and death, supposedly enclosed within the pages of the Necronomicon. The Book of the Dead appears in many other works of fiction, with Lovecraft's approval, as he believed that different authors using common allusions helped to build a background of evil verisimilitude. Is the Necronomicon a real book, or is it just a piece of fiction that has managed to take on a life of its own? Well, it depends who you ask. Number 4. The Lesser Key of Solomon. The Lesser Key of Solomon is a grimoire compiled in the 17th century from materials that were already centuries old at the time of the book's original publication. The volume is divided into 5 books, one of which contains instructions on how to grant the practicing magician an eidetic memory and the ability to instantly learn materials. Another of the books teaches the user how to contact angels using a wax tablet and a method known as scrying. 2 of the other books describe the 24 different angels and their relation to the 24 hours in the day, and the 360 spirits of the degrees of the zodiac. However, the Lesser Key's most famous book is known as Ars Goetia, which contains 72 sigils, each representing a different demon, as well as instructions on how to summon the 72 demons, and even how to control them. Before you go searching for a copy at Barnes & Noble, consider the following. The Lesser Key of Solomon is apparently a cursed book, with anyone who owns a copy of it reportedly being subject to constant bad luck, or in some cases, even death. Some owners of the book have reported seeing the pages turning by themselves, and even flying across the room, while hearing whispers and seeing dark shadow people. If this warning has reached you too late, and you have already fallen victim to this horrible curse, the good news is that it can apparently be broken by burning all the pages and disposing of the ashes. No one knows for sure who wrote the Lesser Key of Solomon. Some of course believe that it was written by King Solomon himself as a gift for his son, but others believe that it was actually dictated by some of the 72 demons in order to give themselves a means of crossing over to our world. Whoever actually wrote it, I hope that it was done with the purpose of helping us control the dark forces that are knocking on the door of reality, and not the other way around. Number 3. the Book of Soiga. This 16th century treatise on magic, written in Latin, came into the possession of the former advisor of Queen Elizabeth I and famous mathematician, astrologer, alchemist, and occultist John Dee in the year 1580. The book was filled with spells and instructions on how to summon demons, but most curious of all were the several pages which were covered in more than 40,000 letters, all seemingly distributed at random. John Dee spent 2 years trying to crack the code that would allow him to read the book, but could not. In 1582, his colleague and fellow occultist Edward Kelly offered to perform a seance using a special mirror which would allow the Archangel Uriel to speak through him. They performed the ritual, with Dee recording the dialogue between himself and the angel in his spiritual diaries. Dee began the conversation by asking, "Is my Book of Soiga of any excellency?" The angel replied in Latin that the pages of the book were indeed special and were revealed to Adam by the good angels of God in the Garden of Eden. When asked if he could help them translate the tablets of letters which comprised the final 36 pages of the book, the angel responded that only the Archangel Michael had the power to decipher it. Dee would spend several more years failing to decipher the final pages of the book, while concerned at the rumors that the book was cursed and would bring death to anyone who translated it within 2.5 years. The book eventually went missing and was considered lost to history, with the only references to it being in Dee's various diaries. This changed in 1994, when a John Dee scholar searched the British Library. It had been searched many times before, but all the previous searchers had made the mistake of looking for it under the letter S for Soiga, instead of using the book's alternate title described in one of Dee's diaries, Alderia Sive Soiga Vocor. The scholar found 2 copies of the book using this method. In 2006, a mathematician was able to use a computer to analyze the 46,656 letters of the tables and discover the different keyword that each coded page used. This also revealed that the spelling errors between the 2 books proved that they were both actually copies of an even older text of unknown origin. The author of these texts is still unknown, and though the supposed angel said it was dictated to Adam by angels, the idea of angels in the Garden of Eden teaching Adam how to summon demons seems inconsistent with the established biblical lore. Is this supposedly cursed coded grimoire actually authored by some sinister and malevolent force? And what purpose was the book intended to fill? The more we learn about this book, the more mysterious it seems to get. Number 2. The Grand Grimoire. Sporting the alternate name of the Gospel of Satan, this 16th century book has the reputation of being one of the most terrifying books on occultism ever written. The book is filled with instructions to summon not only demons, but the devil himself in order to sell your soul to Old Scratch. It describes in great details the rituals that will let you call forth Lucifer, Beelzebub, Astaroth, as well as 6 lesser demons, and also contains spells that will, among other things, let you win the lottery, talk to spirits, make someone fall in love with you, and turn yourself invisible. The book's ritual instructions are very intense, with some spells calling for house pets like cats to be sacrificed and skinned and popped into a pot. The original copy of this book is currently being kept under lock and key in the Vatican archives, but other versions are available for purchase, such as the Kindle version, which you can own for $1.75, which is a great deal for something that will apparently let you turn invisible and then win the lottery. Of course, the additional cost of your pet cat and your soul may add up. The name of the original author is unknown. However, legends and rumors state that the author wrote the text while being possessed by the devil, which I suppose makes him Satan's ghostwriter. Number 1. The Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich manuscript is a coded book that was believed to have been written at some point in the early 15th century. It was discovered in a locked chest in Rome in the year 1912, and deciphering its history and, more importantly, its meaning has been a goal of several different scholars for many years before and since. Its first known owner was believed to be Rudolph II. Rudolph apparently thought that the mysterious book had been written by Roger Bacon, and purchased the book for a huge amount of money, roughly 600 ducats of gold. The first 100% confirmed owner of the text was an alchemist named George Barish, who found the mysterious book in his personal library, unsure of its origin. It was passed from him to a variety of scholars, emperors, and officials, all of whom failed to decipher its bizarre text and illustrations. Several of the world's best cryptographers from the First and Second World War have tried to decipher its 240 pages, and have not found any way to read the book. Some of the pictures include detailed sketches of plants that are not found in nature, and zodiac signs. As you might expect, there are several theories about the purpose and the author of this book, with some believing that it was a herbology text written in a lost shorthand, and others having more outlandish theories that it was created by aliens from another world. One theory is that the book was written by either a demon or the devil himself, and that anyone who manages to translate its contents will unleash a curse upon the world. A theory they believe is bolstered by the fact that several people who have attempted a translation have gone on to suffer several years of bad fortune. Whether the origin of this book is human or demonic in nature, it is still the most mysterious and curiosity-inducing book in human history.